What if I told you that your IQ, that number that supposedly defines how smart you are, is not set in stone? What if the science is telling us loud and clear that intelligence is not something you're born with, but something you can build? Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about one of the most exciting, most misunderstood topics in all of modern neuroscience: intelligence. What it is, what shapes it, and most importantly, what you can do to increase it. After 14 years as a consultant neurosurgeon, one thing has become impossible for me to ignore. The brain is not fixed. It is alive, it's adaptive, and constantly changing. I see brains adapt to traumatic injuries. I see children born with devastating conditions develop astonishing abilities. I see adults recover speech, movement, and memory after diseases that once seemed hopeless. The brain is not marble. It's alive and it rewires itself. And yet, intelligence has long been treated as if it were carved in stone. In this video, we're going to walk through the scientific evidence together. Hard science based on peer-reviewed research, studies involving hundreds of thousands of people, that we're going to talk about what this means for you right now, today. And I'm going to give you practical advice based on the research and my own personal experience. Finally, we're going to talk about how access to LLMs, large language models, is redefining the way your and my children's brains develop. Because I think AI's most underrated application is not productivity, it's cognition. And once you see it through that lens, it's really hard to unsee. So stay with me till the end of this video. This channel was created after patients asked me for clear, accessible information from a practicing clinician. If you find it helpful, please subscribe and leave a comment. It does help me shape future videos around the questions that matter most to you. Thank you. Before we ask whether intelligence can be improved, we need to be clear about what we mean by intelligence. There is a fashionable view that intelligence tests measure only test-taking ability, the level of education and privilege, or the random tasks that psychologists who administer these tests put into the test itself. Now, that view, I think, is a bit simplistic. The reason intelligence testing works is that performance across many different mental tasks tend to correlate. People who do well on vocabulary tests, for example, often also do well on pattern recognition, reasoning, working memory, and problem solving. Not always, not perfectly, but reliably enough that psychologists can extract a common factor, what we call general intelligence, often called G. This does not mean one number captures your whole mind. It clearly does not. It does not measure creativity, for example. It does not measure judgment, or whether you're a decent human being. But it does measure something important: how efficiently a person tends to learn, reason, solve unfamiliar problems, and handle complexity. So we need to avoid two mistakes. The first is to worship IQ as a destiny, and the second is to dismiss it because it makes us uncomfortable. A blood pressure reading does not tell me everything about a patient. I would be a poor doctor if I said blood pressure was meaningless because it was only one number. Intelligence is similar. It is not the whole person, but it is not nothing. Now let's start with the big question that has dominated psychology for well over a century. Is intelligence genetic, or is it shaped by your environment? Here's the honest answer. It's both. But for most of history, the genetic side got all the press. People heard phrases like high heritability and assumed that that meant intelligence was basically fixed at birth, that you either had it or you didn't. And that's not what science says. Here's a concept that trips people up. When scientists say IQ has a high heritability, that doesn't mean your environment doesn't matter. It means that among people growing up in similar environments, genetic differences explain a lot of the variation. Change the environment dramatically and the equation changes entirely. And we have very good evidence for this. A landmark paper published in the journal American Psychologist in 2012 reviewed decades of intelligence research and concluded something striking. When children are adopted from working-class homes into middle-class homes, so just changing the environment, IQ scores increase by 12 to 18 points. Now, it's 12 to 18 points, I stress that. That's a huge gain. That's often considered the difference between struggling academically and thriving. And that's just from a change in environment. Now, let us pause and reflect for a second. The same child, the same genes, but different environments, dramatically different cognitive outcomes. This is the foundation of everything we're about to discuss in this video. Your brain is plastic. It does respond to what you put it through. And I will be giving you a detailed, evidence-backed map of exactly what moves the needle. Starting with the first most important factor, education. A paper published in Psychological Science in 2018 showed what might be the most comprehensive study ever done on education and intelligence. The study pulled data from more than 600,000 people across dozens of studies. And the finding, every additional year of formal education increases measured intelligence by approximately 1 to 5 IQ points. And you might think, well, of course, more education makes you smarter. That's obvious. Here's what makes this significant. The effects were seen across all types of cognitive abilities, not just knowledge recall, but reasoning, working memory, processing speed, and the effects persisted across the entire lifespan, from children to adults in their 70s or even 80s. So, education is not about pouring facts into the mind, it's about shaping the very architecture of the brain. The second factor is early childhood stimulation. Now, here's where it gets particularly exciting and a little personal if you're a parent like me. A study published in JAMA Pediatrics, the Journal of the American Medical Association, the pediatrics section, in 2020, followed thousands of children in the United States and tracked what dictated their IQ at ages 4 to 6. And the factors that mattered most: parental education levels, breastfeeding, lower stress in the child's parents, and very importantly, this is the key one, cognitively rich parent-child interactions. What do I mean by cognitively rich parent-child interactions? Things like reading together, conversations, questions, play that challenges the mind. Now, these weren't just factors nice to have, they were among the strongest predictors of child's cognitive performance before they even started school. And it wasn't just found in this big study in the United States. A Brazilian birth cohort study published in 2023, looking at children from very different genetic and social backgrounds, found that early childhood stimulation like reading and structured play predicted IQ at age 6, independently of genetics. Now, the environment was doing something that genes alone could not. Think about what that means. By the time a child walks into a classroom on their first day of school, years of environmental inputs have already been shaping the architecture of their brain. Now to the third factor. If I told you that a drug existed that improved memory, enhanced attention, protected against cognitive decline, and stimulated new brain connections, now you would probably want to buy that drug immediately. But that drug already exists. It's called exercise. The effect becomes even stronger when exercise is combined with cognitive training. As a runner myself, this is one of the reasons I continue training. I'm not only training my cardiovascular system, I'm training my brain. Exercise increases cerebral blood flow. It increases BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It increases neurogenesis, meaning the formation of new brain cells in the hippocampus, that structure located deep in the brain's temporal lobe that has a major role in learning, converting short-term memories into long-term storage, and spatial navigation. Exercise increases synaptic plasticity. Multiple systematic reviews and meta-analysis, these are the studies with the most robust level of scientific evidence, now confirm that aerobic exercise, we're talking about at least 4 months of moderate cardio twice a week, produces measurable improvements in global cognitive function. Not just in young, healthy people, but in older adults too. Even in people already showing signs of a mild cognitive impairment, this effect from exercise is significant. A 2025 paper in The Lancet found that when you combine exercise with cognitive training, you get the strongest effect of all, particularly in older adults who are cognitively healthy. It's a form of prevention. And here's one of the possible explanations. This isn't just correlation for why exercise works. As a junior doctor, I did quite a bit of research on the role of what we call astroglial cells. These are the cells that provide structural and metabolic support to the brain cells, the neurons. They also regulate what we call the blood-brain barrier, and they manage the synaptic communication, so where the neurons, the brain cells, communicate with each other. The research published in Molecular Neurobiology in 2025 points to something called astroglial plasticity. Essentially, exercise physically remodels the support cells of your brain, stimulating also neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons, strengthening the synapses, and improving the infrastructure of cognition itself. Your brain is an organ, and like every organ, it responds to training. Now, the fourth factor is nature and the outdoors. A 2022 systematic review published in Educational Psychology Review looked at what happened when schools introduced nature interventions, outdoor learning, green playgrounds, nature walks, even just classroom plans. Now, the results in children aged 5 to 18 were striking. Substantial improvements in selective and sustained attention and working memory. Now, these are not peripheral cognitive skills. Attention and working memory are the foundation of learning. If a child can't hold information in mind, they cannot filter distractions. Nothing else works. And it turns out that something as simple as time in green spaces was significantly moving those metrics. There is something about the restorative quality of natural environments, like being outdoor, in front of a lake, natural sunlight, that gives the brain's directed attention systems a chance to recover and strengthen. Factor number 5 is nutrition and sleep. We'll move through these more quickly, but they deserve mention. Reviews of children's nutrition show that adequate level of iron, iodine, zinc, and key vitamins are linked to better working memory, attention, better reasoning, and non-verbal intelligence. Micronutrients deficiency isn't just a health problem, it's a cognitive problem. And what about sleep? Well, the evidence is really strong here. Children who get adequate, high-quality sleep show better memory consolidation, better cognitive development, and better academic performance. And this is not surprising. Sleep is when the brain processes and encodes the experiences of the day. Deprive a child of sleep, good quality sleep, and you're depriving them of one of the most important growth mechanisms. Now, one final concept I want to introduce before we move on, because it explains why all this matters across your entire life, not just in childhood. A 2021 systematic review in Aging Research Reviews introduced the idea of cognitive reserve, essentially a buffer of brain resilience that you build up through a lifetime of intellectual engagement, social connections, exercise, and stimulating activities. People with high cognitive reserve can sustain significant brain changes kind of associated with aging or even early disease without showing cognitive decline. They've built up enough neural resources that they can absorb damage and keep functioning. And here's the critical point. Cognitive reserve is built across your entire lifespan. Every year of education, every curious question you pursue, every book you read, every challenging conversation you have, it all goes into the bank. There is a cumulative effect. The actions you take today are investments in the brain you will have in 10, 20, 30 years' time. Now, we've established that the brain is malleable, that cognitive stimulation, rich, sustained, challenging intellectual engagement is one of the most powerful things you can do for your intelligence. That curiosity, learning, and exposure to new ideas literally reshape your neural architecture. We've seen that. And we've established that for much of human history, access to high-quality cognitive stimulation was profoundly unequal. Now, the study by Nisbet mentioned before, that moving a child into a middle-class environment adds 12 to 18 IQ points. What does that actually mean? It means access to books, to educated conversations, to someone who answers your questions rather than dismissing them, to a parent who has the time and knowledge to engage with your curiosity as a child. Now, those inputs used to be expensive. They were rationed by birth, by postcode, by luck. Until now, for the first time in human history, the ability to educate yourself, to satisfy any curiosity, to go deep onto a subject, to get a clear, patient, tailored explanation of anything is available at your fingertips to almost anyone with a phone. I'm talking about large language models that provide that same intellectually rich environment we talked about. Available 24 hours a day, infinitely patient, never tired, never dismissive of a dumb question. Now think about what we know from the research, that cognitively rich parent-child interactions are really important. What made them rich? The quality of the responses, the back and forth, the questions answered, the curiosity rewarded, the concepts explained at the right level and at the right time. An AI model can do all this for any child at any hour of the day. Now think about that study that every year of quality education adds 1 to 5 IQ points. Now what made that education quality? It was engagement, feedback, explanation. An AI tutor adapts to your level in real time. It never moves on until you understand. It never gives up. We now have, and I say this with the full awareness of how significant this is, closest thing humanity has ever produced to the individualized tutor that was historically reserved to kings and aristocrats. Aristotle was Alexander the Great's personal tutor. Most of us never had anything close to that. Of course, your and my child, I think, could have something better. So the child in a rural village with a smartphone and an AI model can ask the same quality of question and get the same quality of answer as the child of a professor at Oxford or Cambridge. I personally find it quite extraordinary. And for those of us lucky enough to already have enriched environments, this is still an upgrade. Because even the best human tutor gets tired, gets distracted, has gaps in their knowledge. The best AI models right now can hold a sophisticated conversation across mathematics, philosophy, and creative writing, all in the same session. I genuinely think that the future belongs to not to children who use AI to avoid thinking, but to children who use AI to think better. Here's the practical advice. So what should we actually do with all this information? Because science is interesting, but unless it changes behavior, it remains entertainment. Practical message of this video is not that intelligence is infinitely malleable. It's not. Genes do matter. Age matters. Disease matters. Luck matters. But the evidence points in one clear direction. Your brain is not fixed. It is not also magic. It changes in response to the environment you repeatedly give it. So, here's my practical advice. This is what I'm doing right now in my 50s. First, I try to treat education as a lifelong intervention, not as a phase of childhood. Most of us behave as if structured learning ends when we leave school or university or professional training. But biologically, that makes very little sense. The adult brain remains plastic, less plastic than the child's brain, of course, but still capable of learning, reorganizing and adapting. As a doctor and a neurosurgeon, I've had to keep learning throughout my career. Medicine does not stand still. Surgical techniques evolve, imaging improves, and now artificial intelligence is beginning to alter how we think about data, diagnosis, and education. So my first piece of advice is this. Choose something difficult and study it properly, not casually, not by watching a few random clips while scrolling at night. Study properly. Build yourself a curriculum. Read a book. Take notes. Watch lectures. And discuss it with someone. Test yourself and explain it out loud. One of the most powerful ways of learning is not simply to consume information, but to retrieve it, organize it, and explain it. This is why teaching is so powerful. This is exactly what I'm doing right now in this video. When you try to teach something, your ignorance has nowhere to hide. And by the way, feel free to call me out if I say something that does not seem quite right, maybe in the comments below. My second piece of advice is this. Move your body if you want to protect your mind. This is not optional. Brain is not computer sitting on a desk. It is a living organ inside a moving body. Exercise supports blood flow, vascular health, mood and sleep, and several mechanisms related to plasticity. In my own life, running and tennis are not just about fitness. They are part of how I keep my brain functional. They change my mood. They sharpen my thinking. They improve my resilience. They give structure to the day. And they remind me that the brain and body are not separate systems. So the practical advice is simple. Do something aerobic. Do something that builds strength. Do something that challenges coordination. Also, as we've seen from one of the studies, if you can, try and do your daily exercise as close to nature and natural sunlight as possible. Ideally, you should do something that you enjoy enough to repeat for years. The exact activity, honestly, matters less than consistency. The best exercise for the brain is the one your future self will still be doing in the months and years to come. My third piece of advice is this. Take sleep seriously. A tired brain is not an optimal learning machine. We often speak about sleep as if it were a luxury or a weakness or something to be sacrificed in the name of productivity. That is biologically absurd. Sleep is involved in memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and metabolic health. If you are chronically sleep deprived, your brain may still function, but it is functioning under constraint. Children are even more vulnerable to this. A child who is tired will not learn optimally. An adult who is tired will not think optimally. So before buying supplements, brain games, or productivity systems, ask the less glamorous question. Am I sleeping enough? Am I protecting my child's sleep? Someone somewhere said that a better brain often begins with a better night. Now, my fourth piece of advice is this. Play with the large language models as much as you can, not as a replacement for thinking. Artificial intelligence can be used very badly. It can write the essay for you. It can give you the answer before you have struggled with the question. It can make you feel clever while quietly making you intellectually lazy. And that is the danger. But used properly, AI can be extraordinary. It can become a personal tutor, available at any time on almost any subject. The key is how you use it. I try not to simply ask, what is the answer? I ask, teach me this step by step. Test my understanding. Explain where my reasoning is weak. Give me an analogy. Now make the explanation more rigorous. Now, as an analogy, I often use Google Maps even when I already know where I'm going. My children sometimes ask me, Do you not know the way? Of course I know the way, but that is not the point. Google Maps tells me about the traffic. It tells me the fastest route today. It warns me about road closures, and it shows me alternative routes with similar arrival times. Sometimes it even suggests a road I've never explored before. I think a good AI tutor should be like a cognitive sat-nav, not simply take you to the answer, but show you the route, show you the traffic, show you the wrong turns and alternative paths, and most importantly, gives you constant feedback in real time. I mean, that's extraordinary. My fifth piece of advice is this, and it's probably the most important advice for parents. As a parent myself, I don't think I do this enough. And the advice is to try to protect children's curiosity before trying to optimize performance. It is very tempting to hear a video like this and think, right, how do I increase my child's IQ? But that is the wrong starting point. The first goal is not to manufacture a high-performing child. The first goal is to preserve curiosity. I wished as a young parent I read more with my children. I asked them more what they think. Let them ask silly questions and let them be wrong. Now, someone once said to me that with children, attention is the doorway, but curiosity is the engine. Knowledge comes later. And this is where AI, I think, can be very powerful if used with care. But I would not simply hand my child an AI system and walk away. I would use it with them, make it a shared exploration, ask the AI to quiz them. For example, during long journeys now in the car with my children, we play a quiz show that is AI generated with random questions about sport, science, and foreign languages. One final consideration is this. I would not use intelligence as a label. An IQ score is not a life sentence. A school report is not a prophecy. A childhood label is not neurological destiny. The brain has limits, but with those limits there is room. There is room to learn, to improve, and to become more precise, to make mistakes, to be more curious, more thoughtful, and more useful. And perhaps this is the most important point. In the age of AI, information is no longer the scarce resource. Answers are everywhere. The scarce resource is knowing what to ask, how to think, and when not to accept the first answer. Now, I don't know whether I'm saying anything new or original here, but I personally believe that the intelligence test of the future may not be whether you can find information. Information is everywhere. But whether you can turn that information into understanding.